You believe you know the story. You believe the Gospels told everything, that the Scriptures revealed every word, every teaching, every miracle. But what if I told you there was something more? Something that wasn't written on the pages that reached you, something that was whispered only to the 12, in the quietude of Galilean nights, away from the crowds, away from the scribes, away even from the official memory that crystallized into dogma. You grew up hearing parables. You heard about the sower, about the prodigal son, about the good Samaritan. But those words were for the crowds, for those who had ears and still didn't know how to hear. There was another teaching, a teaching given not in the public square, but in close circle, not in loud voice, but in a tone that pierced the chest, a teaching that couldn't fit on parchment because it wasn't made of letters. It was made of silence, of recognition, of awakening. This is not a secret hidden by conspiracy. It is a secret forgotten by distraction. And now in this moment, as your eyes traverse these words, something ancient inside you begins to stir. It's not curiosity, it's remembrance. There was a time when teachings were transmitted from heart to heart, from breath to breath. There were no churches, there were no institutions, there were no intermediaries between the soul and the divine. There was only a man who looked into the eyes of 12 other men and said, "You call me master, but I came so that you would remember who you are." This is not in the Gospels you know, but it is in the fragments that were left out, in the lines between the Gnostic texts, in the oral traditions that survived in whispers, in sacred communities that protected not dogmas, but experiences, experiences that cannot be controlled, packaged, sold, or institutionalized. Because what Jesus revealed to the 12 was not a doctrine, it was a key, and this key opens the door you always knew was locked inside you. You were taught that the apostles were special, chosen, different from you. But that was the first veil placed over your eyes. The 12 were not saints. They were fishermen, tax collectors, common men with doubts, fears, ambitions, men like you. And it was precisely for this reason they were chosen, because what Jesus had to reveal was not the privilege of the wise or the pure. It was the inheritance of all. But for you to inherit this, you needed to be ready to hear in a different way, not with the mind that judges, compares, categorizes, but with the heart that recognizes. And then, one night, after the crowd dispersed, after the superficial questions ceased, Jesus sat with the 12 around a small fire. The light danced on their faces. The silence was dense, but not uncomfortable. And he began to speak, but it wasn't a sermon, it was a revelation. "Will ask me about the kingdom of God," he said. "You ask me when it will come, where it will be, how to recognize it. And I tell you now, in a way I cannot tell the others, the kingdom will not come with visible signs. They will not say it is here or it is there, because the kingdom of God is within you. His you may have already heard, but you didn't hear what came after. You didn't hear what he whispered when Peter, confused, asked, 'Master, how can a kingdom be within us? We are men of flesh, of doubt, of sin.' And Jesus smiled, not with condescension, but with tenderness, like one who says a child who has forgotten their own name. 'Peter,' he said, 'you are not what you think you are. You are not your mistakes. You are not your doubts. You are not your mistakes. You are not your doubts. You are not even your body. You are light forgotten of itself. And I did not come to save you. He came to remind you, light forgotten of itself. Let this echo in you, not as concept, but as possibility. What if everything you think about who you are was just the most superficial layer of something infinitely vaster? What if what you call it were just a foggy reflection of a presence that has always been here, silent, awaiting recognition? Jesus didn't speak of salvation as rescue. He spoke of salvation as rescue. He spoke of salvation as rescue. As remembrance, like when you wake from a nightmare and realize the danger was never real, that you were always safe, that you were only dreaming. You see me do what you call miracles, he continued. You see me heal, transform water, calm storms, and you think this is power. But I tell you, all that I do, you will do also, and you will do even greater things, because it is not I who does it. It is the Father in me, and the Father is in you in the same way. This is not arrogance. It is precision. Was saying that the same source that moved through him moves through you. The difference is not of nature, it is of recognition. He knew, you forgot, and the 12, sitting there, began to perceive something that would make them tremble, not from fear, but from recognition. They were not learning something new, they were remembering something new. They were remembering something ancient, something they had always known, but they had been buried under layers of guilt, fear, expectation, false identity. Jesus then did something not recorded in the official texts. He asked them to close their eyes. There, around the fire, the 12 obeyed, and he began to guide them, not with words of doctrine, but with words of experience. Feel the breath, he said. Don't try to control it. Just observe. The air entering, the air leaving. This movement doesn't come from you. It comes through you. This is the Father's breath, the same breath that gave life to Adam, the same breath that moves the stars, and it is in you, now, always. The 12 breathed, some for the first time, truly, not as function, but as revelation, because in breath there is no identity. There is no identity, there is no fisherman, no tax collector, no apostle. There is only life happening, and when you turn to this, something inside you relaxes, something inside you recognize. I am not doing this. This is doing me. Now, Jesus continued, feel the body, not as enemy, not as prison, as temple, as vehicle for this light that you are. Feel the heart beating. You don't come the heart to beat. It beat. Life pulses through you without you doing anything, without you deserving it, without you deserving it, without you asking. This is grace, and grace is not favor, it is nature. And there, in that moment, the 12 began to understand that everything they called spiritual effort, everything they tried to reach, everything they prayed and pleaded for, was already present, not as distant promise, but as immediate reality. The problem was never God's absence, it was their distraction from themselves. Jesus then opened his eyes and looked at each of them, and in that gaze there was something that cannot be written. There was recognition, not of I see you, Peter, but of I see through you, and what I see is the same that sees through me. Eden said something that was carefully removed, reinterpreted, softened by the institutions that came after. You call me Son of God. Indeed I am. But you are too. Every human being who has ever been born is a child of the same Father. The difference between me and you is not of essence, it is of consciousness. I know who I am. You are still learning to remember. This was too radical, too dangerous. Because if all are children of God in the same way, then no one needs a mediator, no one needs temple, priest, ritual to access the divine. The divine is not locked in heaven. It is here, now, in every breath, in every heartbeat, in every moment of presence. And this, dear reader, is the secret that could not be widely disclosed, not because it was forbidden by God, but because it dismantled every structure of human power built upon the idea of separation between you and the sacred. Jesus taught the 12 something that few hear clearly even today. When you pray, do not multiply words. Do not think you will be heard by the quantity of supplications. Your Father knows what you need before you ask. So do not pray asking, pray recognizing. Enter your room, close the door, and there, in the sacred place, find that which never left you. It is not outside, it is within. And when you find this, everything else will be added, not as reward, as consequence. Pray recognizing, not supplicating, not negotiating, recognizing, like one who awakens and realizes that daylight has already arrived. You don't need to beg the sun to rise, you just open your eyes. And then came the deepest teaching of all, the teaching that Judas did not comprehend, that Peter would deny 3 times before understanding, that Thomas would doubt until touching. Jesus looked at them and said, "He and the Father are one, and you and I are also one," not as metaphor, as truth. There is no separation. There never was. Separation is the dream, unity is the awakening. He then took a handful of earth and said, "This earth and my hand, are they separate?" And the 12 looked confused. Of course, they were separate. The hand was flesh, the earth was earth. But Jesus smiled and said, "My hand is made of this earth. When I die, this hand will become earth again. And when the rain falls, this earth will become plant. And when you eat the plant, it will become you." Where is the separation? Only in the mind that names. But in essence, everything is one single movement, one single dance, one single breath. And they continued, "In the same way you see me here, separate from you. But the life that moves me is the same that moves you. The consciousness that looks through my eyes is the same that looks through yours. You just don't perceive it because you are identified with the name, with the story, with the body. But if you stop, if you truly stop and look, not with the eyes, but with attention, you will see there is no separate. There is only life happening, and you are this. You always were this. You always will be this." The 12 fell silent. It was not a silence of not understanding. It was a silence of lingering, like when you hear something so true that it needs time to resonate in all your cells. And Jesus then did something surprising. He laughed, a light laugh, warm, totally human, and said, "You are trying to understand with the mind, but the mind can only understand division, can only understand this and that. You will not understand this, you will leave this. And when you leave this, you won't need to understand. Because understanding will come as consequence, not as cause." Then he taught them the practice that would change everything, not a memorized prayer, not a ritual, a practice of presence. Whenever you feel lost, he said, whenever you feel fear, anger, sadness, separation, do this, stop. Just stop. Don't try to solve. Don't try to change. Just stop and feel the breath. After a few moments, ask yourself, who is aware of this breath? Who is aware of this breath? Who is aware of this breath? And you will realize something extraordinary. There is something in you that is always here, always calm, always whole. Just observing. This is what you are, not the fear, not the sadness, but that which is aware of them, and that which is aware as never touched by what it observes. Like the sky is never stained by the clouds that pass through it. This was meditation, but not as an Eastern technique, as a practice of recognition. Jesus was teaching the 12 to become conscious of consciousness, to observe the observer, to awaken from the dream of identity and perceive the vastness of what they truly are. And this didn't require temple, didn't require priest, didn't require institution. It required only stopping, returning, recognizing. When you go into the world, he continued, do not preach dogmas, do not create rules, do not make me an idol. He did not come to be worshipped. He came to be recognized. Recognized as mirror. You see in me what you don't yet see in yourselves. But when you see it, you will not worship me. You will simply recognize, and then you will do the same thing, not as missionaries of a religion, but as mirrors of a truth. You don't convince anyone of this truth. You simply live from it, and your presence awakens in others what is already there. This was the true gospel, not good news about an external savior who would solve your problems, but good news about an internal reality that has always been whole, always been free, always been at peace, waiting only for you to turn your attention to it. Jesus then touched on the most delicate theme of all. You will see me, he said, and the silence became heavy. And you will think I have departed, but I tell you, death does not exist. The body dies, the form dissolves, but that which I am, that which you are, cannot die, because it was not born. It has always been here, and it always will be. When you see me after death, it will not be a ghost, it will not be a miracle, it will be recognition. You will see that I was never the body, never the story, always the presence, and presence doesn't go anywhere, because it is not in a space, it is before a space. And then he said something that few recorded, do not wait for my return as a future event, or return whenever you return to yourselves, whenever you return to presence, whenever you stop seeking out there and recognize in here. This is the second coming, not in heaven, in the heart, not in time, in the now. The 12 began to perceive that everything he spoke was not promises about later. They were revelations about now. The kingdom was not coming, it was here. The Father was not distant. He was closer than breath itself. Salvation was not in the future. It was in the present recognition that there was never anything to be saved from, except the illusion of separation. And Jesus concluded that night with words that resonate to you. Now, in this instant, you have sought God in temples. I tell you, your body is the temple. You have sought God in scriptures. I tell you, truth is written in your breath. You have sought God in heaven. I tell you, heaven is where you are fully present, because presence is the portal, not to another place, but to the reality of what always was. Now, dear reader, stop. This is not just an account. This is an invitation. Close your eyes for a moment, not because I ask, but because you are ready. Feel the breath, not as task, as return. Feel the air entering, fresh, renewing. Feel the air entering, releasing. And notice you are not doing this. This is happening through you, as you. And in the simplicity of this perception, something ancient awakens. It is not new. It is remembered. You are not who you think you are. You are not the story, not the name, not even the body. You are that which is aware of all this, and that which is aware was never born, never aged, never had fear, was never lost, has always been here, has always been whole, has always been at peace. Open your eyes slowly and notice the world hasn't changed, but something in you has changed, not as transformation, as recognition. You are reading these words, but something in you is beyond the words, before the words, sustaining the words, and this is what you are. Jesus did not reveal secrets to the 12 because they were special. He revealed them because they were present, and he is revealing to you now, not through concepts, but through your own experience. You are breathing, you are aware, you are here, and here is where God has always been, not as separate entity, but as the very essence of what it is to be alive, to be present, to be conscious. The 12 carried this message to the world, but with time, the message was distorted, because the human mind prefers complication to simplicity, prefers mediation to directness, prefers ritual to presence, and so churches were built where before there were only circles, doctrines were created where before there was only recognition, hierarchies were established where before there was only essential equality. But the true teaching never died. It survived in fragments, in mystics, in contemplatives, in anyone who, tired of seeking out there, finally stopped and looked within, and found not an emptiness, but a silent fullness, a presence that never judges, never demands, never abandons, because it is not something you have, it is something you have, it is something you have. You were taught you are a sinner, that you are unworthy, that you need to be fixed, purified, saved. But Jesus told the 12, and is telling you now, you were never broken, you just forgot. And forgetting is not sin, it is just dream. And awakening is not sin, it is just dream. And awakening is not merit, it is just recognition. When you wake from a nightmare, you don't become better, you just realize the danger was never real. So breathe again, deeply. And as you breathe, recognize this breath is not yours, it is life's, and you are life breathing. You don't have consciousness, you are consciousness. Consciousness taking temporary form of body, of name, of a story. But the essence was never limited by any of this. The essence has always been free, always been vast, 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 always been vast. The nature of what is, before any division, before any judgment, before any story. Jesus called it kingdom, Buddha called it nirvana, Lao Tzu called it Tao. The names don't matter. What matters is recognition, and recognition happens now, not tomorrow, not after death, not after you become better. Now, exactly as you are, because what you are in essence never needed to improve, has always been perfect, not as moral concept, but as ontological reality. You are expression of the divine. An expression of the divine cannot be other than divine. The 12 lived this, some more deeply than others. Some fell, rose, doubted, recognized again, because awakening is not a single event. It is continuous process. It is moment by moment choice to return. Return to breath, return to breath, return to breaths, return to the recognition that you were never lost, only distracted. And now you are here, reading these words, and something in you resonates, not because these words are special, but because they are echoing something you always knew, something that was whispered to you before you were born, before you assumed a name, before you assumed a story, whispered in the language that has no sound, in the language of being. You don't need to believe this. You can just experiment. And the experimentation is simply stop whenever you can. Cost 3 breaths. Feel the air entering. Feel the air leaving. And in the simplicity of this act, something in you relaxes. Something in you recognizes. Ah, I am alive. I am here. And being here is enough. Not because you deserve it, but because it is the nature of what is. Jesus did not found a religion. He offered a practice. The practice of being present. The practice of recognizing. The practice of loving, not as moral effort, but as natural consequence of perceiving that there is no other. There are only different forms of the same life. And when you see this, truly see, you can no longer harm. Not because it is forbidden, but because it would be like harming yourself. Because you see the other is you in another form. This is the love Jesus taught, not romantic love, not sentimental love. Love as recognition of unity. And from this love comes not condescending charity, comes natural compassion. Like your right hand naturally cares for the left when it is hurt. Not from obligation, from recognition that they are part of the same body. And so you walk in the world, not as saint, not as enlightened, simply as someone who remembers. And the remembering doesn't make you perfect. It makes you woman, deeply woman, because you stop pretending, stop performing, spirituality, and simply are, our presence, our breath, our consciousness, happening, and sometimes you forget, and then you remember, and forget again, and remember. And with time, the remembering becomes more frequent, more natural, until it becomes your default condition, not as achievement, as return home. Jesus told the 12, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I will be there. But he wasn't talking about religious meetings. He was talking about shared presence. When 2 people are truly present with each other, not lost in thoughts about past or future, but really there, something sacred happens. Because presence recognizes presence, and in mutual recognition there is communion, not of words, of essence. You can do this now, with anyone. You don't need to talk about spirituality. Just be truly present. Look in the eyes, listen for real, and you will see, behind the person's eyes, there is the same consciousness that looks through yours. It is the same light, the same mystery, the same life. And when you see this, everything changes. Not the world, but the way you are in the world. The 12 carried this message through persecutions, doubts, betrayals, deaths, not because they were heroes, but because they had tasted something that could not be erased. They had tasted the reality of presence, the reality of presence, the reality of the inner kingdom, and once tasted, you can no longer pretend you don't know. You can forget, but you can no longer pretend there isn't something real there, waiting to be recognized again. And this message reaches you through 2,000 years, through translations, interpretations, distortions, but still, the essence remains, because essence cannot be destroyed. It can be buried, it can be forgotten, but it cannot be destroyed. And now, it is here, on this page, in these words, but more importantly in your breath, in your beating heart, in your consciousness that is aware of all this. You are not reading about an ancient teaching. You are experiencing the teaching now, because the teaching is not information. It is transformation. It is the difference between knowing about water and drinking water. You can know everything about water, its chemical composition, its properties, and still be thirsty. But when you drink, it doesn't matter if you know chemistry. What matters is that the thirst was quenched. So drink, not from this page, but from your own presence. Close your eyes one more time. Not as repetitive exercise, but as return home. Feel the breath, feel the body, feel life pulsing, and recognize this is the kingdom, here, now, not as metaphor, as reality, and in this reality there is no fear. Because what can be feared when you realize you are life itself? There is no death, because what can die when you realize you were never born? There is only life happening, life being, life recognizing itself through infinite forms, and you are one of these forms, unique, precious, temporary, and at the same time you are life itself, eternal, infinite, immortal. You don't need to choose between these two truths. You are both. Like a wave is simultaneously wave and ocean. The wave has form, movement, temporary identity, but it never ceased being ocean, was never separate, only seemed so. Jesus showed this to the 12, not through theories, through presence, through gaze, through touch, through shared silence, and showed that you can live from this. You don't need to isolate yourself in a monastery. You don't need to isolate yourself in a monastery. You don't need to renounce the world. You just need to be present in the world, to be truly here. And from this presence, everything you do becomes sacred. Not because you sanctify it, but because you sanctify it. But because you recognize that everything is already sacred, always has been. It was just being ignored. So go. Not as a convert of a religion, but as someone who remembered that the light you sought out, there has always been in here. And when you walk with this remembrance, no matter how faintly, you become a beacon, not preaching, just being, and your presence awakens in others what has always been there. Not because you do something, but because presence is contagious. Awakening is contagious. Peace is contagious. And if you forget, as you will forget, don't blame yourself. Jesus did not teach guilt. He taught return. So get return. So get return. Return to breath. Return to presence. Return home. And each return strengthens you. Each return grounds you. Until you realize you never left home. You just already did. But home has always been here, where you are, always. This is the sacred Jesus revealed to the 12, not as privileged information, but as direct recognition. And now it has been revealed to you, not by my words, but by your own experience. You are here, you are present, you are here, you are present, you are alive. And being alive is not a means to get somewhere. It is the destination itself. It is the kingdom realized. It is God manifested. It is the sacred happening. And if this found you, if something resonated, don't keep it as private treasure. Don't preach it as doctrine. Simply live. And let your life whisper to others what these words whisper to you. You are not lost. You never were. You are just awakening, and the awakening is now. It always was now. It always will be now, because now is all that exists. And in the now, you are complete, you are whole, you are free, not because you achieved it, but because you recognized it. And recognition is not conquest, it is grace. And recognition is not conquest, it is grace. And grace has always been yours. Always.